All right, ready to jump into this one?
It's going to be good, I think.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I noticed a few plot holes.
Oh my god. What?
Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name is Josh Lindell. I'm a PhD student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with my co-hosts.
I'm Dr. Kimberly Plomp. I'm a bioarchaeologist. I study human skeletal variation, health and disease, and human evolution.
And I'm Dr. Ross Barnett, a paleogeneticist, mainly looking at megafauna of the Pleistocene or Ice Age.
And today we have a special Halloween episode. We're looking at a movie called The Neanderthal Man from 1953, a horror movie about a Neanderthal man. Had either of you heard of this movie before?
No.
No.
I came across it a few years ago. I think we were in the field and we were trying to look for an appropriate movie to watch one night, and we found out about this one, but I could never actually find a copy of the video to watch. So I've heard of it for a few years, but I've never seen it before yesterday.
But now it's free on YouTube.
Yeah, that is where we found it. There's also a version where you can pay for it on YouTube as well, which I didn't do.
Oh. Well, the free one is fine. I didn't notice anything.
That was a pretty good transfer.
So who wants to summarize this movie?
I think Ross should.
Oh yeah, can I do it? That'd be great. So, like, a summary of this movie, it's not going to do it justice because it's amazing. It's really amazing. Basically, there's a guy, scientist, Professor Groves, who is a super genius that nobody appreciates because he knows everything there is to know about Neanderthals and human evolution. And he creates a super serum kind of thing, which he uses, first of all, on domestic cats. And the super serum can turn back the evolutionary clock and kind of reignite previous ancestral state. And so he turns a domestic moggy into a saber-toothed tiger. And then when he is trying to expound upon his groundbreaking or earth-shattering theories to the local, looks like old white guys club, they're not having any of it. And that kind of tips him over the edge. So he experiments on himself with this super serum and turns himself into a Neanderthal man, who then goes out and is consumed by kind of animal rage and kills a few people, nobody of any importance particularly, but they kind of move the plot along. And a random doctor who has been brought to the professor's house by his fiancée starts to investigate the mysterious bunch of murders that have been happening, and eventually they discover all about the professor's nefarious research, including the fact that he experimented on their deaf-mute maid, called Celia, I think, and turned her into a part Neanderthal as well. And basically, the end of the movie comes fairly suddenly when some good old boys get a posse together to hunt down the Neanderthal man and shoot him. And then he kind of returns to his home, to the professor's home, and dies, and then turns back into the professor. And everyone lives happily ever after. I mean, it's, what more do you want from a film, really, except mad scientists, Neanderthal men, deaf-mute maids, nosy doctors, like 50s
Sabertooth
broads.
cats.
Sabertooth tigers. They're never called sabertooth cats, which piss me right off. I can tell
I knew
you.
it would.
Fantastic special effects, which are in no way comparable to, a paper mache and super glued with felt, with like big walrus tusks, saber-tooths. Oh, it was amazing. I loved like every second of this film.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's it. I don't know if you guys...
I liked that the main character was named Dr. Ross and seemed to specialize in big cats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was a zoologist.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah, he was like a zoologist stroke vet.
Yeah.
He seemed to have lots of interests.
Yeah.
As well as being quite boring, I think, as a character. I mean, this film was so 50s. It was incredible. It was like, every kind of B-movie cliche you could imagine. It was just mashed in there. It was fantastic. Like the kind of the the speeches that they were giving. Like, I really loved the scene with the professor's fiance where she was essentially being torn apart by his mad quest. She seemed really kind of hung up on this guy. He was a total dick. I mean, what she saw in him, I have no idea, but she was like basically hanging off his knees, begging him to tell her what was going on. And then he didn't for some reason. But she was still saying that she wanted to marry him and she'd wait for him and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, it was incredible.
My favorite scene was when he's talking about his groundbreaking hypotheses to the old man's club, which I'm not even sure what it was. Brain size is the same. But so they ask him just a question, like, could you imagine being at a conference and you're presenting something and then someone asks you something and then you're like,
a very fair question.
Stupidity is the cornerstone of your existence.
I wrote that down as well. Those quotes were fantastic.
So good.
Yeah. So, you get like a hand up at the back saying, could you maybe expand on point 3 about where you went from, humans have evolved from Neanderthals to this point you're making, and then he's all, stupidity is the cornerstone of your existence and hypocrisy is your Bible. And
so good.
It was mad. It was total mad.
I've been at a conference though where somebody started their presentation with their lawyer's information.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, cheers.
So, it does get pretty heated.
I'm sure it does. But I love another bit he goes, it's lunacy. They'd never accept an idea without proof. As if that's somehow not what every single person on the planet. Nobody's going to, unless you're like, a QAnon nut or something, or flat earthist, nobody's going to be like, oh yeah, that sounds great. We don't need any proof. I'll just believe it.
No,
especially the kind of nonsense he was spouting. He cut out black things
and put them on a piece of paper.
Yes,
so.
which was awesome. I mean, I was convinced.
Yeah.
And they didn't even fit. Like some of them, the brain sizes that he cut out of the black paper to put inside the skulls to show the progression of the brain size. Some of the brains were spilling out of the skulls. I mean,
yeah. Well, the chimpanzee was a lot larger than what an actual chimpanzee brain would be.
That was cool. That was like the only little bit of inverted commas science they ever attempted was the different kind of fossil hominids.
I know, but then they had Piltdown Man.
Yeah, which was pretty cool. That was like
I looked, so the
nice
movie
surprise.
Came out in 1953, so let's say it was in production 52, 53. Piltdown Man wasn't found to be accepted totally as a fake until 53.
Yeah.
So they would have could you imagine? And then the paper comes out, you're like, damn it!
Honestly, I don't think they would have cared, possibly. Yeah.
They also on that progression, it goes from chimp to Java Man to Piltdown Man, then to Cro-Magnon, and then to Neanderthal, and then to modern man. So I don't think they were too concerned about the accuracy.
Well, I mean, for listeners who don't have a huge, strong basis in anthropology, Neanderthals are not our ancestors. Neanderthals did not evolve to be, neither are chimps, evolved to be humans. They're different.
It was
lineages.
basically the same form that Professor Farnsworth has in the Futurama episode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The same kind of.
Yeah.
Oh dear. But if we can talk about inaccuracies just for a second, you guys had sort of stepped into the one with the human skulls, but I've got to talk about the Sabertooth Tiger, because that was incredible. So they have a Sabertooth Tiger that he's off screen. I mean, it never explained where the first Sabertooth Tiger comes from. It's just it escapes in the beginning.
Yes,
possibly.
But that's one of my questions that we'll get into. Well, we can get into it now or after.
Okay. Well, I mean, it appears, and it's just a normal tiger. It's just like a stripy tiger.
I think, it's just footage from a zoo, I think, from a tiger just hanging out in its zoo.
Yeah, very much possible. Or they could have, I mean, this is the 50s. The kind of Humane Society would have been okay with somebody having a trained tiger on set, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true.
It looked like, it interacts with some of the actors towards the end. But, they've made absolutely no attempt to glue some saber teeth onto this tiger. So every time you see the tiger, it's got normal
would you have
sized teeth.
attempted to glue some saber tooth onto a tiger?
Well,
accepting resumes. You just have one task.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And no health benefits.
Yeah. But they do have it wrestling with a guy towards the end. It kind of wrestles with the guy that gets almost eaten by the saber-tooth. But I mean, what's even funnier is when there's a close-up, they cut to this really, really bad kind of paper mache tiger skull with some super enormous, like way longer than, it looks like a walrus essentially. It's not the length of a saber-tooth cat. And there's other issues, like it's called a saber-tooth tiger all the way through, and there's from the time the first saber-tooth was discovered, like back in the 1850s, people have been saying don't call them saber-tooth tigers because there's no link between them and tigers at all. They're as closely related to tigers as they are to domestic cats, to leopards, to lions, whatever. They're kind of a completely separate branch of the cat family tree. So there's no way that they should be calling them tigers. People have been saying this for like nearly 200 years, but they always get like stripes, which doesn't make a lot of sense because only tigers have stripes. Most cats have a kind of spotted or rosette type pattern, or just plain colored. And we know kind of from studies of various saber-tooth species that they were mostly kind of woodland specialists. So they would have had probably some pattern, but they wouldn't have been grassland specialists, which is what the tiger is essentially. And that's why it has stripes, so it can blend into a kind of tall grass background. Stripes aren't really much good in a forest. They're not really that kind of camouflaged.
Pretty noticeable.
But yeah, and we also, another thing, I'm not really pulling them up on this too much, but all the saber-tooth cats had short tails like a bobcat, so a little bobtail, whereas the tiger in this film obviously had a tiger-length tail. But apart from that, it was fantastic.
I just assume that they used tiger just because it's probably more exotic at that time, right? It was probably very different and scary and...
Yeah, probably. But lions as well are pretty scary, I would say. The tigers are probably quite easy to get hold of. I mean, we know like today that there's more tigers in captivity, both legal and illegal, held in the States than there are in the wild. So, the States have always had plenty of tigers to go around.
So here's a question for you then, Ross.
Yeah.
Is there a fossil record of tigers? Because, what is the ancestor? What's the common ancestor of tigers today, and what makes a tiger relative to lions or other big cats?
Yeah. So the tiger is one of the first branches of the kind of big cat family tree. So in the big cats, you've got a lion and leopard, which are the kind of two most recent divergences. Then jaguar on that same branch, and then you've got a slightly different branch which has tiger and snow leopard, so they are sister species. And then the very basal divergence in the big cats, the Panthera cats, is the clouded leopards. So the mainland clouded leopard and the island clouded leopard. So we do have fossils of tigers from Southeast Asia, unsurprisingly, which is where they're still found today. And you've got something called Panthera zdansky, I think it's called, which is a kind of stem tiger-ish, somewhere on the branch that goes to tigers and snow leopards. And you've got Panthera paleosinensis, which is also another kind of basal tiger. I think I'm just kind of recalling that from memory, but I think that's what it is. And we also have, Pleistocene tigers, which are actually slightly bigger than tigers around today, even bigger than the Siberian tiger, the Amur tiger, which is the biggest subspecies we've got just now.
And can you explain for the listeners what basal means in your...
So basal is just, if we think about kind of evolution as a sort of family tree, something that's basal to something else just means it's diverged earlier than other things. So if we think about like a human family tree, think about your own family tree, then your siblings are the kind of closest relatives to you.
So it's at the base.
In this, at the top of the tree, whereas something like your fifth cousins, you'd have to go quite a long way back down the trunk of the tree before you get to the branch that goes off towards your third cousins.
Right.
So basal just means that if something's basal to something else, it just means it's diverged before for the species you're talking about.
Cool.
So yeah, we use a lot of tree analogies in kind of evolutionary studies just because they're quite easy to grasp and quite descriptive.
Mm-hmm. I know that from listening, I know that there's some people who don't have a background in anthropology or archaeology or anything at all. So I think we need to define things like that sometimes.
Yeah. So if we're talking about the cat family tree, then right at the tips of the branches, you've got like the lion and the leopard. They're basically kind of on two branches beside each other. And then if you go back a bit down the trunk and then come out on another branch, you've got the sort of tiger and the snow leopard. And if you go down the trunk a bit more towards the ground, towards the base, you have another branch coming out that would have the clouded leopards and all the other cats on it as well. And so the divergence between the modern cats and the saber-toothed cats, they're in separate subfamilies. That's a different kind of taxonomic rank. There's probably about 15 to 20 million years ago that those two lineages diverged. Whereas like something like the lion and the leopard, they only diverged maybe 1 or 2 million years ago. But yeah, who'd have thought the Neanderthal Man would prompt a discussion on cat phylogenetics and relationships with trees?
So where do North American mountain lions fit in on that? They're with the jaguars?
No, so mountain lions or pumas or cougars or varmints or catamounts or whatever. I mean, they've got more common names than I think any other North American mammal. But their Linnaean name, their Latin name, is Puma concolor, and so they're quite interesting because although they're fairly sizable cats, they're not part of the big cat group. They don't group with lions and leopards and jaguars and tigers and snow leopards. They're actually part of the cheetah lineage. So the cheetah is another fairly big cat, which isn't actually a close relative of the lions and tigers. So in the cheetah lineage, you've got the first branch, the basal branch, is the cheetah. So that's the one that diverges the earliest. And then you've got the puma in North America and South America, and the jaguarundi, which is a kind of not very well known small cat of the Americas. You get them from Texas down to Argentina, essentially. And it's a weird kind of weaselly looking thing. And what kind of unites these three cats is their kind of skeletal morphology. So they're both kind of quite small-headed. If you looked at a picture of a cheetah and a puma and a jaguarundi as well, they kind of look similar in that their heads are kind of smaller in proportion to their body than some of the other cats. And there's also fossil members of this lineage that are found in North America. There's the American cheetah, Meracinonyx tremani, which is actually a kind of close relative of the puma. It's now extinct, but it was found in the Ice Age of North America. And people think it may have been like a kind of cheetah analog in North America. So you might have had parallel evolution going on here. So at the same time that the cheetah is evolving in Africa and Asia, you have a similar experiment going on in North America with a kind of selection for a high-speed pursuit predator in the American cheetah. So yeah, there's a lot of cheetah and puma remains in North America.
Okay, I'm going to get really semantic about the common nomenclature right now, but you say we can't call them saber-toothed tigers because they're not tigers. But if I'm correct in my understanding of everything here, leopards are paraphyletic, right? There's the leopards and clouded leopards. They're on different lineages, right?
Yeah.
And you have mountain lions that are not even in the Panthera genus.
Yeah.
So should we call them puma? Should we not use the word mountain lion if we're not allowed to call them saber-toothed tigers? Or does that mean we're not allowed to call them mountain lions?
Well, I mean, this is a really good point. I mean, it's where, the idea of common names kind of falls down because humans love to classify things, but we're not particularly good at grasping what are the kind of real relationships between particularly biological groups. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with calling a puma a mountain lion. I don't have a problem with calling a clouded leopard or a snow leopard. I mean, the only issues, well, my main bugbear, and this is one that I bring up quite a lot, is the use of the word panther. So panther is a really, really bad word because, when you say a mountain lion, you're not talking about an African lion. When you say a clouded leopard, you're not talking about an African leopard. When you say a snow leopard, you know you're not talking about a clouded leopard. So these things have qualifiers to make sure you know what you're talking about. Whereas a panther basically means whatever you want it to mean. A panther is just any kind of big cat. A panther technically refers to 3 different things officially. It can refer to the puma from Florida, the Florida panther. It can refer to melanistic, that is a black-colored jaguar, or it can refer to a melanistic or black-colored leopard. And so panther is something that is definitely paraphyletic. And the reason it really bugs me is because whenever you hear a report of a big cat on the loose in somewhere it shouldn't be, like Britain or Germany or France or whatever, and they talk to the eyewitnesses always say, oh, it was a black panther, or oh, we saw a panther. And that's when I immediately go like, well, change the channel, because people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. It's one of those kind of signifiers that just, it sounds like it should mean something, but it doesn't. And so I ignore it with extreme prejudice.
Okay.
And that's my
Mic
little hobby
drop.
horse for this week. Yeah.
It just felt like you should walk away at that point.
Yeah. God, I've exhausted myself with that rant.
It does, yeah, when you get up on that rant, yeah.
I'll
So
need a stepladder to get down.
going back to the movie, the first saber-toothed cat came from that opening scene where he was sleeping and then he heard the window break.
Mm-hmm.
That was the cat escaping from the lab.
Yeah.
So then what I don't understand is if it's the one cat, the house cat that he keeps in the cage that keeps escaping as a saber-toothed cat, when they shoot it, how does that cat end up back in its cage as a regular cat? Isn't it, it would still be riddled with bullets, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I thought maybe he had like multiple cats and that, he's just not very good at keeping an eye on them. And so
he just keeps getting a new
it's
one
not
and then it
explained.
escapes and he gets a new one and it escapes.
Yeah, that seems, it's not so much like he's basically setting up a kind of saber-toothed cat's breeding program is what it seems to be. That's his kind of main purpose with the regularity which he kind of sets them loose. That didn't make sense. And I don't understand, why he was surprised at the beginning, it didn't explain, what he'd done. Like he didn't, there was no explanation of what he'd done with the cat that would have made it kind of turn into the
when he went into the lab and saw the window was broken, he was like, oh shit. And then he was like, whatever, not my problem anymore.
And did they get the window fixed? I think the window got fixed and then got broken again, didn't it?
It broke a couple more times, I think.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't the same cat being used over and over, and if it was just new ones escaping each time, then there would have been a dead house cat riddled with bullets beside that fake deer Christmas decoration covered in leaves.
That is true. I didn't think about that. Maybe that's how it disappeared then.
Is it got up and walked away? But why wouldn't it have died?
Or maybe it disappeared because it turned back into a house cat and they couldn't see it.
But it would just be lying there in the opening.
Maybe the professor snuck out and stole it back so that they wouldn't find it.
I guess so.
I guess
it's just plot holes.
I don't know how he would have known where they shot it. Did they tell him?
Yeah. Well, it would have been better to leave the cat then, because then everybody would have just assumed they were drunk. Like on The Office when Dwight's like, oh, I hunted a werewolf, but by the time I got to it, it had turned back to my neighbor's dog. So I guess I can go on. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say the inaccuracies of Neanderthal. What I found, so when he turned into the Neanderthal, he turned into this brutal killer, right? But he also was scientific enough to take notes of how long it took him. So he said, it took half an hour to become a Neanderthal this time, and then it took an hour for him to... So he's lucid enough and himself enough to be taking scientific notes on what's happening, but can't control his killing instinct. So I think he's the killer, and he just was using the excuse of being the Neanderthal to do it.
Yeah, because he regresses into a Neanderthal, but he still knows how to open a window and carefully climb out.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the moral of this story, or like just the story itself. When he's very passionately addressing the what is it? This
It's
science
like the
Field
Royal
Club?
Council of Science or something. Yeah.
Yeah, like the academy. When he's addressing the table of old men smoking, he's got this theory that ancient humans were also smart because they also had big brains, which fundamentally I think we agree with. We agree that Neanderthals and Homo erectus even were probably very smart, and Neanderthals are probably overlap in intelligence with us, and Java Man Homo erectus was over 1 million years ago, but still they would have had probably language and complex culture. So I fundamentally agree with him on that, even though everybody else in the academy is laughing at him because, like they say, as everybody knows, brain size has nothing to do with intelligence, which I guess is true within modern human populations, but over human evolution, we can definitely correlate the evolution of brain size with intelligence, right?
Well, it's actually, somebody just wrote a book. Oh, it's right behind me. I'll grab it. So it's called The Human Advantage, How Our Brains Became Remarkable by Susanna Herculano Hosel. And it's such a good book. And it's actually, so the human brain is kind of right on trajectory for to have the brain size that we do for a relative size for a regular primate. So if you just kept scaling primates up, we fit comfortably at the top. So we don't have an abnormally large brain for a primate. But what it is that we have more neurons in those spaces. So we have a higher density of neurons, which is what gives us the...
Do we really not have a larger brain?
Well, it's larger, but relative to our body size, it's not. It's actually the great apes.
It scales elementrically.
Yeah, it scales elementrically, and it's the great apes that actually are the ones that skew off of that because they're the ones, they actually have smaller brains for their brain size.
Okay.
So they're the ones that have the derived phenotype, of that, whereas humans actually fit quite nicely on that allometric scale of primate brain body size scaling.
Cool.
But it's the density of our neurons in particular parts of our brain that help us be this intelligent. And if you want to, it's called The Human Advantage. It's a really good book.
Throw that up in the show notes. Anyway, so he's talking to this academy, and he's telling them that he has this theory that ancient humans were also very smart, and they disagree with him, but he doesn't have any evidence, which rightfully they like, well, I'm not going to believe this without evidence, and he's like, I'll show you. So he creates a serum, which he injects in himself to turn himself into a Neanderthal, and as a result, he turns into a bloodthirsty killer. What was the point of this experiment? He was trying to prove that Neanderthals were smart, but in the end, he turned himself into a Neanderthal and just became a bloodthirsty killer. So what is the message that this movie is sending? And when he saw that the cats were turning into saber-toothed cats, which also doesn't evolutionarily make sense because house cats didn't evolve from saber-toothed cats.
Absolutely.
But And modern humans didn't evolve from Neanderthals either. But so he has created a serum to turn back evolution in himself. And his thesis is that Neanderthals were just as smart as us. But then his experiments have to be showing him that his thesis is wrong. So why does he follow through and inject himself? He's already been doing the work. He goes to the committee and he's like, this is what I think. And they're like, you're wrong. He's like, I'll show you. By proving you right? Like, I don't understand what the point of this serum was supposed to have been.
Yeah,
right.
That's definitely a reject with no hope of resubmission.
I thought that
if I was reading that.
I thought he was also trying to show somehow that everything from the past was still in us too. Wasn't he trying to show that we were an accumulation of that? So I think that's what he was trying to show, that within us there's still the Neanderthal man.
But that's not the thesis he was presenting about brain size to the academy. He was just saying straightforward, they had big brains and therefore they were smart too. He doesn't really talk in that speech about traits being held through evolution, does he?
No, but I'm going to just go out and say that the evolutionary theory was very loosely understood in this movie. At the end, when he's dying, then that zoologist guy he says he makes a speech like, oh, we can't blame him. Essentially, boys will be boys, right?
Yeah.
We can't blame him. He was trying to show us science, and really what this tells us is that we all have a killer Neanderthal in us. Like, if we take away this modern humanity, we're all just brutal murderers. And I don't know. I don't understand. I think it's almost like William, where they started to convolute too many things. Like, they're like, yeah. So
I mean, it's just Jekyll and Hyde with like a thin kind of veneer of Neanderthal over the top.
Yes.
And there's not, they've just done Jekyll and Hyde, and instead of a Mr. Hyde character, they've turned that into Neanderthal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jekyll and Hyde is a classic story, but I think, yeah, you're right, Kim. They haven't fully thought out how that kind of maps onto the other.
What drove me crazy was how the Neanderthal, whenever he turned, his nails grew so long, like as if as if claws or these weird human claws were important for Neanderthals.
I love the fact that all the transformation scenes, they were pretty good actually for 1953, but they got double their money for them because they just played the transformations in reverse for when he changed back, and that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
When the maid with those pictures of her changing, oh my god, those were so funny. And then like she didn't quite make it to Neanderthal, and she just looked like some creepy like 50s horror movie vampire thing.
Yeah. We've got to talk. I mean, you sort of mentioned briefly, Kim, about how at the boys' club kind of ending where he says, yeah, we must not think of him too harshly for showing us science. And all the way through, I was kind of shocked by just how kind of patronizing all the male characters are to the women in the film. Like, just right from the start, like when the window breaks right at the beginning and his daughter comes in and she's kind of concerned, and he's basically like, don't you worry your pretty little head about it, get back in the kitchen kind of stuff. And with his fiancée as well, he's hugely patronizing to her. And then the maid Celia, the kind of deaf mute maid, it says at one point, they don't even know where she's come from. The daughter says, oh, she's Mexican, I believe. It's really nuts. And she's kind of, we know that she's been injected with the serum, hasn't maybe regressed all the way to Neanderthal, but towards the end, she's not even in the final scene.
No, I know.
Nobody talks about, what's going to happen to her. Is she going to keep turning back into a sort of semi-Neanderthal?
No one even cared. Even when she said, like, I don't remember anything, they're like, and shrugged, and then she just left the room and continued cleaning, I suppose. Like, it was absurd.
Yeah. It was, I mean, if that was like a glamorous portrayal of what life was like for women in the 50s, then geez.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. There was also the saucy barmaid or the cafe waitress at the cafe that gets harassed by the Neanderthal halfway through. Yeah, she was kind of painted in fairly broad strokes. But she was probably one of the best actors in it.
Oh, she did the sexy photo shoot.
In a one-piece bathing suit. I mean, that's outrageous.
One of the things that I noticed on a YouTube video was that when they do that sexy photo shoot, she goes behind a bush to change, and then when she comes out, she's a different actress. Did you notice that?
No.
I didn't pay that much attention, but I saw a YouTube video pointing out that the one who does the sexy poses is a different actress, and then she goes back behind the bush, and the original actress comes back out.
So she just didn't have it in her contract to show that much skin, probably.
I guess. I don't know. I'll have to go rewatch that scene a lot more closely and make sure. But it did seem like her hair was a lot darker.
And she was quite far away. I did notice that there was no close-ups.
Yeah, these shots are quite far away, so...
Maybe it was just too scandalous for the original actress to do.
Yeah, could have been.
I guess so.
I mean, there's a lot of... Nowadays, they have contracts of what can be shown and what can't be shown. And I assume that probably back then with the more modest society that included ankles and elbows. And
what was nice was some of the kind of stuff that was just part of the culture at the time. It seems like outrageous, like being scandalized by a very modest one-piece bathing suit. But there's also the scene where the guy in the car gets attacked by the saber-toothed cat, and he just whips out the gun that he obviously has in his glove box and starts firing at it. There's a lot of people that just seem to have guns and are quite happy to shoot at anything that moves in this film, which is, I guess, unsettling from a European perspective. But
I don't know if that's so different from America today, though.
Yeah.
I've been to the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus, and they have, at least when I was there a few years ago, they have signs on every door saying that you're not allowed to carry concealed weapons on campus property. So, like, some states, it's legal to just carry a gun with you.
Oh yeah, in Arizona, everybody has the holsters.
Yeah, in Texas as well.
Yeah. So I guess at this point in the podcast, if people have been listening, we don't have to say that there is no Neanderthal in North America, because he had said something. He's the world expert on human evolution in North America.
They said that he wrote a book about evolution of man in North America,
yeah.
but we don't really talk about the evolution of humans in North America because we arrived so recently that there hasn't been a lot of significant evolution happening within North America.
No, and when we arrived, we were fully modern, anatomically modern humans.
Mm-hmm. Which isn't to say that humans are not still evolving, but not speciating, or there's been no significant evolutionary changes in the past 10,000, 20,000 years at the level of speciation. It's so hard to qualify that because, like, lactase persistence has evolved within the last 10,000 years. So there has been significant evolution, but, like, not at the level of dividing humans into separate species is
or even subspecies.
The point.
No.
Yeah.
But I mean, the biological definition of species is changing, so I mean, I doubt it's going to change to that extent. But
there's many, I guess, many different species concepts.
Yeah.
You can choose which one you want, but I mean, humans are all
we're all
the
one.
same.
Yes. No.
Yeah.
We have very little variation.
Yeah. Even compared to chimps, like chimps from 2 neighboring forests have more genetic diversity than all of humanity put together. Basically, we're kind of fairly homozygous, fairly uniform in terms of our genetic diversity. Yeah,
and our morphological, like how we look too, is all very similar.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that surprised me, I mean, I think this film has a lot of GIF potential. Like, there's a lot of scenes in this film that I'm kind of surprised haven't been turned into GIFs that could have been used at various points in time. And the transformation scene is one that definitely I would love to have a GIF of. It also has sort of meme potential as well. When in the kind of final confrontation, when the Neanderthal appears and kind of kidnaps. Is it the daughter or is it the waitress?
I think it's remember. The waitress.
The waitress, the saucy waitress, played by 2 characters. They sort of start talking about smoking him out from the cave, and as a Brit, I mean, that immediately brings to mind George W. Bush and his kind of admonition to the terrorists that they were going to smoke them out. And I'm wondering, is that a common phrase? I've never really heard it before, apart from George W. Bush in this film.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I've heard it before, but I can't, yes, it's been in my lexicon growing up. And I think they use it, or at least they used to use it as a police way to, like, smoke people out of their houses or something. So if people were, taking hostages or whatever, they would throw in smoke bombs and smoke them out. Right? I think so. Or at least in movies.
I feel like the phrase is in my head from childhood movies as well, so I feel like it's a thing that people say.
Yeah, but it's in there with, being worried about quicksand and stop, drop, and roll and all those things.
Yeah, it's just the terrifying possibility that Bush's kind of foreign policy might have been influenced by this film was one that struck me.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised.
But yeah, I loved it.
So despite the sort of nonsensical plot and the total lack of any understanding of evolution, I think that there are some themes in this movie that are consistent with other movies we've seen, and also consistent with the way that archaeology and paleontology and evolution get portrayed in movies. So, I mean, the main theme, which seems to be driving the movie, even though they kind of dance around it in a confused way, is that humans are bad, which is pretty much the theme of every movie that we've covered, I think. I don't know if we've actually covered a movie that didn't have some theme about how humans are the worst, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe California Man.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They had, bad things in particular people, and then they learned their lessons. But in general, humanity wasn't portrayed badly in that one. But so in this one, the idea is that all of the worst things from our animal past are still present in us. To put it as in a way that's probably more clear than the movie actually says it, I think.
Yeah.
What was the other theme that I was thinking of? Oh yeah, there's this theme of mad scientists and interfering with human bodily autonomy. Mm-hmm. Which comes up a few times. That was definitely in William, the idea of engineering messing with human evolution or messing with human life. And it was also in the 1984 Iceman, where they have, scientists interfering with a human body for science. And so that's a theme that keeps coming up in these movies where there's sort of like science being a double-edged sword where it brings benefits, but at the same time you have to be careful not to take it too far and basically interfere with God's plan or God's creation. What do you guys think about that? Did you notice any other poignant themes in this movie?
Yeah, I think the only one I also would have noticed would have been just that point that guy made about all humans have the ability to be brutes in us, that we're, just a suit jacket away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the main ones. I mean, it's the same messages as kind of Jekyll and Hyde. The idea that just under the surface of every person, there's the kind of atavistic beast waiting to get out, and that civilization is a very thin layer that's kind of pasted over the top and doesn't always hold that inner brute inside.
Mm-hmm. Overall, it was an enjoyable movie. I liked it.
Yeah. Apart from all the kind of, I mean, it had the kind of massively patronizing tone and the talking down to all the female characters.
Well, it was
and
in
the nonsensical
53.
plot points. Yeah, absolutely. But it was enjoyable. And there's some things I thought the soundtrack was quite good. There's quite some kind of very bombastic kind of orchestral music in there, and
the transitions were so strange sometimes. Like when the sheriff or the doctor, whoever was driving, and the saber-toothed cat jumped on his car, the music is all like do 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 do, like high tension. This is scary, and then when he starts shooting at it, it changes to like dance music, something you would jive to. It was very strange.
I thought he turned on the radio for some reason.
All the kind of fades and stuff were, very much of the kind of 50s school of filmmaking. That kind of style of music and that kind of style of fades between scenes and stuff. You don't get that anymore, really, in films. That was only really at that time. It's quite interesting as a kind of filmmaking fossil, essentially.
Yeah, that's true.
One thing that I noticed was like the dialogue and the acting is all really like over the top, and sort of the dialogue was really fake and mechanical in the way that a lot of 50s movies are. But some of the acting, like the facial expressions, I thought were really really good in some scenes. Just a very sort of subtle like look of worry crosses people's faces at some point, where I thought that was surprisingly well done compared to the dialogue.
Yeah.
Then again, the mad professor's speeches were really well written. They were totally insane and like unbelievable, but they're like just the wording was just such a poetic way to just passionately tell people you think they're stupid.
Yeah. Oh, I loved every minute of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to write them down. I think Kim wrote some down as well. But yeah, they were.
I can't wait. I'm going to try and pull
superb.
them out sometimes at my sister's or something.
But yeah, I mean, it was weird. So the main character, the actor, apart from when he was telling everyone that they were stupid in such a poetic way. He wasn't a good actor particularly. The
No.
only kind of characters I thought were good and kind of nuanced in their acting were the waitress. Especially the scene where she's kind of, after she's been attacked by the Neanderthal Man and she's taken back to the house and she wakes up on the couch. There's actually some pretty good acting from her there.
Mhm.
And the guy that was the doctor, Dr. Ross, he was pretty rubbish.
Yeah.
You know, he and I don't know if it was like a 50s thing, but he just kind of, he turned up and they just let him stay in their house for like days on end and never asked him to go away. Just, it seems really bizarre to kind of modernize.
Well, the doctor asked him to go away, but
Yes, the doctor,
then he
the guy that
didn't?
owns the house,
the
asked him to leave.
scientist, yeah. The acting was very much like a university play, like a bit overacting and all that. The daughter was okay though for that time.
Yeah. The fiance wasn't very good, I don't think.
No.
Maybe she didn't have very much to work with, has to be said.
No, that's true. He just, yeah. And then, yeah, you're right. We don't even know what happened to her. She's just gone, right?
Yeah, she left. Just like, she probably ran off with the maid.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
true. Screw all these guys talking down to us. Let's run away together and do a Thelma and Louise.
I hope so. Let's see a spin-off movie of that. So it's not really... I could see how it would have been scary back then, or at least in a goofy way. It's not scary now, but it is an enjoyable Halloween-type movie. It's trying to make Neanderthal Man be a monster character, which is silly. If Neanderthals were alive today, they would be just like us.
I think they would find it insulting.
Oh, they'd find it very insulting.
Yeah, if you like 50s sci-fi, it's definitely worth watching.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's scary in the same way that mummies are scary.
It would be a fantastic one for a kind of midnight movie marathon, something introduced by Elvira or something like that.
Yeah. Is she still around? Or
Yeah,
some form of her?
Elvira, yeah, she's still she's been in the news this past week. Actually, she just released her autobiography.
Oh my god, I want to read that.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
For the kids who don't know,
what?
Well, there's going to be some people listening who don't know who Elvira is.
Oh my god.
She's like she's like an even sexier Morticia Addams who used to introduce movies on,
It's a very good description.
Horror movie marathons. That's all she did, right? Was she ever in her own movie?
Yeah, she was. She was in two of her own movies. There's Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and there's Elvira's Haunted Hills.
Okay, well, I know what I'm doing Halloween.
Kim's kind of underselling the charms of Elvira. So as well as being a kind of very vampy character, she was also very funny.
Oh, I loved her.
Yeah, she had the mannerisms of a Valley girl, but the appearance of Morticia Addams.
I always thought she was like Bugs Bunny's wife mixed with Morticia Addams. Who's Bugs Bunny's
Jessica
wife?
Rabbit.
Jessica Rabbit, yeah. And
yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect description.
Oh, it's Roger Rabbit's wife, not Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I just started a riff in that whole world.
We knew what you meant. But yeah, if Jessica Rabbit had to dress up as Morticia Addams for Halloween,
that's what it would look like. Yeah. Okay, so
do we have anything else to say?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard because we can't go into everything that's inaccurate because there isn't anything that was accurate.
I could bring up, a fairly laid into the Sabertooth angle, but they talk about how Sabertooth have been extinct for 1 million years.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I had that note as well.
The only date they talk about is everything being 1 million years, but Sabertooth cats were around until 10,000 years ago. So, he's out by a factor of, 990,000 years. Yeah. So that
Neanderthals too. I mean,
ticked me off.
Neanderthals lasted till at least 30,000 years ago that we have evidence for, but they kept saying the million years too.
It just sounds better, I guess.
But now, for historical context, though, carbon dating wasn't really developed until the 1950s. So, what would their understanding of deep time have actually been in the 1950s?
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's something that I don't have. I don't have any knowledge of. Like, what was their basis for understanding how old things were, and how off were they in their understanding of these timelines?
I mean, I guess it would be sedimentology, and they would have known that they were younger than dinosaurs by quite a bit, and I think there was a pretty good
for sure. Yeah, relative dating would have been there, but I guess I think anything kind of Paleolithic or older, that would have been like a guess based on like sedimentation rates. They could maybe have a guess for or kind of paleolimnology or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Barb studies, all those kind of things. They could have maybe had a guess at approximately how old something was. But yeah, you're right, for kind of fine scale dating, they would have not known particularly when Neanderthals went extinct or when saber-toothed cats went extinct. And I guess so 1 million versus 10,000, that's what 4 orders of magnitude out. That's not so bad. Let's give them the benefit.
Let's give them, well, it also just sounds more impressive to say millionaires instead of 32,000 years. When he was writing that last journal entry in his notebook, that was pretty epic. I didn't write down what he said. What was his finishing line? Something that you would have written down, Ross, I think.
My last note is, mustn't think of him too harshly.
Oh, that's what the other guy said.
That's what they said.
He just does this big... He just wrote this big monograph about how people aren't going to appreciate him, but how he knows it and he's shown it, and it was pretty good. It was poetic, like you said.
His final words on his deathbed were, better this way, I think.
Right? Yes. I remember that. Yeah.
What does he mean by that? It's better that he's dead?
I think so, than that he's still going to be a Neanderthal that murders people. That's how I took it.
Yeah, it was that or the chair, I guess, probably 1950s. He'd have been going.
Yeah, so it's just
to Old Sparky.
His last words are just specific to his situation, but not a broader commentary on the rest of the movie.
No, I don't think so.
Seems like they could have given him some better last words that summed up the movie better, rather than just better than going to jail.
Yeah.
I think also too what he was getting at when because they made a point of saying that it took shorter time for him to turn into a Neanderthal and longer time for him to come back out of it. So they might have been hinting that it was going to become permanent if he kept doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so better that he died as a human than
kept
later on as a
kept making the choice to take this serum that keeps making him a Neanderthal. Yeah, I'm still confused by what he was trying to prove.
What he was trying to prove, Kim, was that. Let me just find the quote. That stupidity is the cornerstone of your existence and hypocrisy is your Bible.
Yes. Well, I think you proved that. Yeah, well, you know what? Paleoanthropology is still quite a hotly debated field today.
You have to tell us how you managed to get those quotes into a conversation with your sisters.
Oh, I'll just shout it at them at some point when they're annoying me.
The only one I wrote down here is whether your skull is thicker or your intelligence thinner, I can't determine.
Yes, that was
Sick
good
burn.
Too.
So
how does this one measure up to everything else we've done?
It's kind of hard to put it comparatively in there, I think, because it's not a good film, but it definitely is fun.
Yes.
It's definitely, it's a fun watch.
It's a good film in the same way that film. Like the monster from the Deep Lagoon or whatever, and
yeah, it's so bad it's good. That kind of style.
It's fun to watch, but at no point in time should you be trying to learn anything for your anthropology class.
Apart from the sick burns, which you can then use when anyone asks you a question at your next seminar.
Yeah, I think we should point out that the way he addresses his academy there is just not a good way to go about your career.
You ain't gonna get tenure that way.
No.
Whether or not it's true, I would love to say that to a lot of the reviewers for some of the papers I've submitted, but you write it down and then you come back to it tomorrow and you delete it and then you write your actual responses, right?
Yes, I think everybody does that.
Thanks to David Bach for designing our cover art. You can see more of his work at dkbach.com. Screens of the Stone Age is supported by the Paleoanthropological Society of Canada. Find out what Canadian paleoanthropologists are working on at pasc-scpa.ca.